Welcome to the Broncos Podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. It is a chilly, rainy Friday morning here in the Metro. Kind of reflects the mood of the Broncos draft, if we're being honest. This could all work out. It could. A lot depends on what happens on Friday with the Broncos selections, but Sean Payton, as I thought, would send trimmers through the draft, but not in this way. Broncos get on the board. They have everything in front of them with Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, the two running backs. You take one, and they take a cornerback? Wait, what? Jahdae Barron from Texas was the pick. Listen, I saw him play in college. Liked him. I'm being completely honest here. I did not see a scenario where the Broncos would go cornerback in the first round. It's not necessarily a position of need. Listen, you always need cornerbacks. We get it. But did they need one in the first round? What does that say about their confidence in Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan? Because Jahdae was not brought in here to play dime packages and be inactive half the season. Trust me on that. He's going to play, and he's going to play early. So what does that mean for two holdovers? And what does it mean going forward in the draft when the Chargers get Omarion Hampton? You had a chance to go up and get Tyler Warren, and you went defense. I want to break all of that down after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggatt Injury Law a call. I've known Darby Hoggatt forever, probably about 15 years it feels like at this point. Coached his kid in basketball and baseball. We traveled the country watching baseball. We became good friends. Many of Darby's clients become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work, give Darby's team a call. That's 1-833-HOGGATT, 1-833-HOGGAT, or visit the website at hoggattlaw.com. Welcome back to the Broncos Pod with Troy Renck. I'm your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. So, deep breath. What in the hell happened? I mean, you could literally go on a deep dive, Google search, whatever search engine you use, and not find one mock draft. From experts to wannabe guys in their basement to former coaches and scouts and former players, not find one mock that had the Broncos taking Jahdae Barron at 20. And not for a number of reasons. Number one, again, it didn't appear to be a pressing need for the Broncos that you would address in the first round. Number two, most mocks had him going 13 to the Dolphins, who were getting ready to move on from Jalen Ramsey. So that is a position he was probably most often connected to. Most mocks had him Barron going between 13 and 18, 13 and 21, somewhere in that range. So it's not like they selected a player that was a third rounder and put him in the first. Daniel Jeremiah, he had him ranked as his 8th best overall player in this draft. So in that case, there's real value, but the reality is sobering because the Broncos had a chance to move up and get Tyler Warren. He fell, surprisingly, was available at 14 to the Colts, and he was never getting past the Colts. The Colts have not had a tight end eclipse 500 yards receiving since 2018, if memory serves. Their tight end play is the only team in the league that's been worse than the Broncos or comparable over the last 3 years. So when Warren's slipping, Colston Loveland goes 10. That was a little bit of a surprise, but I told you all that, I mean, the league was a lot higher on Loveland than fans were, and even some in the media because of the injury. He goes 10. That leaves Warren falling, and I'm tweeting this in real time. Like, do you move up and try to get at 13, or at 11 with the Niners, at 13 with the Dolphins? Do you try to move up and get Tyler Warren? I asked Sean Payton about that last night after the draft. He said it was a draft that everyone was looking to move back, not up. It didn't seem like it was certainly a pressing need for them, partly because they signed Evan Ingram in the offseason. I get that, but Ingram's 31, coming off a major shoulder issue. He's not the long-term solution. I mean, he's really his guaranteed money suggests it's a 1-year deal type thing. So I would have loved Tyler Warren. And if he develops into a Rob Gronkowski type player, that's going to really hurt. But the way the mocks were done and the way we were connecting the needs with best player available, it just felt like it was going to be a running back. Felt like it was going to be this past week. It felt much more like Travion Henderson, but certainly Omarion Hampton. And when they got to that spot, they went cornerback. Why? Well, listen, this is not an indictment of Barron. Let's be clear here. I watched Barron play at Texas. He played CSU this year. They played in the college football playoff. The dude's a stud. He never misses tackles. He can play. He played like if you look at my column today about it, it was like 1,400 snaps outside, almost 1,000 snaps inside, and 500 plus snaps as a safety in the box. And people that watch the film, I don't watch his film like that, say they're not sure they saw him miss a tackle in the last couple of years. So that stuff jumps in. And George Payton and Sean Payton talked about how they fell in love with his film, that he's flying around, playing downhill, making plays. And Payton said some things that are buzzwords for him if you pay attention, that he's an A-plus learner, former team captain, high character guy. These are all things that Payton wants. They want that crazy, unquenchable, competitive spirit, things that Barron showed at college. They had a bunch of connections. Darren Rizzi, the new special teams coach, his son played as a long snapper at Texas and now is apparently moving into football operations for Steve Sarkisian. He spoke highly of Barron. Vance Joseph's cousin coached Coach Barron. And so they had a lot of intel on him, the off field. How is he in meetings? What's it like when he has a bad day? How many bad days does he have? How does he respond to teammates? Everything they got back was glowing. And they decide, like, at that point, if you have him as a top 10 player and he's on the board at 20, you take him. It's an auto pick in that way. Again, why though? Why corner? Well, again, as we step back a little bit, and I'm not crazy about it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I love the pick. I can understand the pick. I would prefer they go offense. I watched them get their ass kicked by Buffalo in the playoffs, watched them get their ass kicked by Baltimore. Good teams offensively had way more firepower than the Broncos, specifically in the run game. So I'm not going to, and controlling the middle of the field, which again, Ingram helps address. You can always use another tight end. But, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you, I get it. It makes total sense now. No, as I step back and widen the lens, I can see why they did it. It's not one of these picks you're like, oh my God, this is the dumbest pick ever. It's not that. Again, part of it's the shock of why corner. Well, I texted Chris Harris last night. Chris Harris Jr., you all know him. He loves the guy. He watches film on these guys all the time. He's like, this guy's going to be a dog. He can play inside, outside. He's going to play right away. So why him? Well, if we think back to games where the Broncos had issues defensively, when you think back of the Jerry Jeudy legacy game, Levi Wallace just absolutely got torched. You think about the Chargers game with Ladd McConkey when Riley Moss was still out. They got torched. And so they did have vulnerability there. I thought they were a little higher on Chris Abrams' drain than apparently they are, number one. And, well, that's number 3 on this. Number 1 is they're not completely sold on Jaquan McMillan. They don't appear poised at all to want to pay him on a real contract moving forward. Doesn't mean he won't be here this year, but this move all but says they're not going to pay him. His first big contract's not going to be with the Broncos. And then it also tells you that, Riley Moss came back. He struggled at the end of the year after the knee issue, played really well before that. But Moss is capable of moving inside, as is, in theory, Barron. And if you watch Jim Leonard and the way Vance Joseph ran that defense last year, the versatility of the secondary was huge in being able to move Patrick Surtain around more. He wins Defensive Player of the Year. So if you want him to carry with a receiver or follow with a number 1 receiver, Barron can make that happen with his versatility. So, again, you can always use another corner. And that's part of it. And it does bring memories, if I'm being honest, again, as I got a few hours removed from it, and I wrote this in my column, if you can please read in the Denver Post. And it was a tough column to write. I mean, I had like 35 minutes to write like 800 words on a cornerback. We all thought they were going offense. But that's part of the charm of the draft, right? But when you look at Barron, it does bring back some memories, and I was covering the team then, of 2014 when late in the first round, I think it was further than 20, they take Bradley Roby from Ohio State, and you're like, why would the Broncos take a corner? They have the no-fly zone, they have Talib, they have Chris Harris, they have one of the best secondaries. What are they getting a slot corner for? Well, he helped them win a Super Bowl. When you look back in 15, his versatility in 14 and 15, Roby made the pieces fit. So there's some of that. Like, it's building on a position of strength to make our best players even better. I've seen it in baseball where, and our lineup's loaded, like when the Cardinals traded for Larry Walker. They didn't need Larry Walker, but they're like, man, if we get him, we're not going to get a pitcher at the deadline that's going to have the impact that he could in our lineup. So there's some of that, adding to his strength, that we're not going to get an offensive player that we think makes Bo Nix equal of Patrick Mahomes, but we can get a defensive player that can make our defense arguably a top 2-3 defense. It make that even better. I mean, the Broncos had 63 sacks last year. They stopped the run better. They bring back DJ Jones. They've got really all their pieces coming back, and you add Barron. So there's the argument for. And when we talked to the kid in the conference call, you can see how impressive he was. I mean, mature guy. You can see why they liked him. Let's put it that way, that he checks a lot of boxes for them. But best player available over best player available at need was kind of the issue here. We all knew and know they need a running back. The tight end, it wasn't as pressing because of Ingram. But when Warren started to slide, it's like, man, you get in front of the Dolphins at 13, you get Warren? I mean, that could be a generational type player, especially for a coach who loved Taysom Hill. I mean, Warren's a bit of a gadget guy on top of being a great tight end. But if the Dolphins weren't ready to do business, or you felt the price was too high, that's part of we comment on this draft thing. We don't know what those conversations are like. And if the Dolphins were holding firm, wanting a second instead of a third, and you're just like, it's just not worth it. Okay, I'm not privy to that information. I can only tell you that Sean Payton made it very clear that our mocks are embarrassing in the media, and we got it all wrong. I will say this, and I'm not trying to be a smartass. His own daughter at FanDuel, Megan Payton, mocked Omari and Hampton. So it's not just all of us in the media. There's some with direct ties to the head coach who had Hampton. So don't think we were all just throwing darts here. A lot of dots were connecting for them to take a running back. They did not. And so the knee jerk is to rip them. Like, why in the hell do you not take a running back? But it's not like they passed up Ashton Genty. That's different for me. Hampton, I like a lot, as I do Travion Henderson. But it's not Genty, a guy that went to the Raiders at 6. It's a guy who went a couple picks after you to the Chargers. So how does this all make sense? I'll be less apt to criticize this entire scenario if they get a running back in the second round. And Travion Henderson's still on the board. Quinshawn Junkins, his teammate from Ohio State, still on the board. Dylan Sampson, the kid from Tennessee, still on the board. So if you're able to address running back early in the second round, maybe even trade up if necessary, then it makes sense, because then you're like, we got the back most thought we were going to get in the first round if it's Travion Henderson, and we added this corner who's going to make our defense go from good to great. But if you don't, there's the risk, and you end up taking the 8th best running back, the 7th best running back. My concern is, how is that different from last year? Becomes this American Idol auditions, the Bachelor of everyone gets a rose, and you have this 2, 3, 4 back system. When you have 3 or 4 backs, you have no back. Let's be honest. Sean Payton is not a guy that relies on a bell cow. That's just not who he is. But they need somebody they can trust. And with all due respect to Javonte Williams, great kid, everything about the story and the comeback from knee surgery, fantastic. He wasn't good last year, folks. He wasn't. 513 yards, the lowest number by a Sean Payton running back in the history of his head coaching career. And he had the second most targets as a receiver with no explosive plays. So don't tell me that, we'll get a running back in the 6th round. Really? If you're saying that, then you're banking on estimate as a 21-year-old, more mature, understanding the pro game, is going to bounce, like going to have a serious bump. And that you're going to fit a guy in around him with probably like Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm not crazy about that. And I loved Estime coming out last year. I would, if the longer you wait, the more concerned I get at running back, that it's just going to be same old, same old. That's not good enough in the AFC West. It's not good enough to win the AFC West. For me, they went into this draft 2 players away from being able to beat the Chiefs in the AFC West in their 9-year dominance of the division. That is running back and tight end. You got better defensively, no doubt. But you got to get a running back. And if it were me, I'd move up and get Travion Henderson, and then this makes total sense. If you wait and you're trying to sell me on the 7th or 8th best running back in the 3rd round, not buying it. I'm just not. That's a total show me pick that person's going to have to come in and fit and be like, okay, you're right. That's your Kamara. You knew more than the rest of us. But on paper, there's no way I could support that move. But here they are. They get Barron. They're better defensively. They don't get a tight end. They don't get a running back. This is where it gets interesting, though. This draft specifically had probably, when you talk to evaluators, around 13, 15 first-round grades. It's one of the fewest in recent memory. And so when you look at that, this, as both George Payton and Sean Payton said last night, is that this is the Honeywell spot of this draft now, 2nd and 3rd round. The strength of this draft is in quality, solid players, not stars. It's not top heavy. It's very, very light at the top. And we saw that, and it's because of the quarterback position. Cam Ward was taken, and the Giants moved up for Jackson Dart, and Shedeur Sanders slide was real. I'll talk about that a little bit as we get to the end of the pod, but that's not a Broncos central issue. Yeah, if you wanted fun, the seismic thing would have been the Broncos trading up to 2 to take Travis Hunter and use him at both cornerback and receiver. Jacksonville did that. That's a great fit for Hunter staying in Florida. I don't know why they wouldn't let him play both ways there. That's a franchise that needs a jolt in the worst way, needs a weapon for Trevor Lawrence. So I hesitate to think what Cleveland is doing at that position, but whatever. Cleveland has had their own issues for years. But that would have been seismic. Genty, if he would have fallen past the Raiders and you could have moved up to like 9 or 10 to get him, then I'm in on it. He didn't. And the Raiders are now making sound football decisions, folks. It's another reason why I wanted the Broncos to go offense. The Raiders under Pete Carroll, they're not going to do dumb shit anymore. They're going to be solid. Nobody's saying they're going to win 11, 12 games, but with Pete Carroll's influence, John Spytek, the GM, Mark Thews over there used to work with the Broncos, Tom Brady, there just feels much more stable now than what we've watched with the Raiders in recent years. Not unlike what Sean Payton's done here with the Broncos. And that's part of why Payton and even George Payton, they deserve some trust here on this move, is how this fits. But again, they didn't address it. So you go into day 2, that's rounds, if you're listening on Friday. So Friday is rounds 2 and 3. Starts at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. Running back has to be a priority. You got receivers on the board still. A kid from Iowa State is on the board. You could go receiver there. I never believed they were going to move up for receiver. That didn't make a lot of sense. Egbuka was the one that there was a lot of heat coming and connecting him to the Broncos. He went to the Bucs right before the Broncos. But you can get a receiver in this draft, 2nd or 3rd round. I'm much more reasonable about that. The running back one it's got to be the right one. And while everyone will tell you this draft is so deep in running backs, it is. But do you watch Sean Payton's system? It requires a specific type of running back that can block on 3rd down and is a real weapon in the pass game. That's the problem. Like you look at Caleb Johnson, the kid from Iowa. I don't know if he could catch the football. He's a bell cow back. If you want to just hand the ball off 25 times, he's your guy. When has Sean Payton ever done that? Like you look through his 17 years of game logs with he and Breeze all those years, except 3 now, 2 in Denver, like 1 in New Orleans. He doesn't rely on a bell cow back. Even when he had Mark Ingram, even when he had Deuce, mean, you look at the guys he's had, he's never, ever relied really on a bell cow back. But the value in the back, and you see it most with Alvin Kamara, is a guy that can get 950 yards rushing and another 650 receiving and 15 touchdowns because he's a threat in the red zone, both as a runner and a passer. He's a threat on third down, both as a runner and a passer. That's why the Travion Henderson thing really started to gain traction, is he could be like their Jamar Gibbs. You look at how Gibbs was used. Did Detroit really need a running back a couple years ago? Well, they pair him with David Williams or David Montgomery, and you're like, oh, I get it now. And that's where if Henderson is paired with Estime, okay, we got something. But if you just tell me anyone is paired with Estime, it doesn't click the same way. Now, Sampson from Tennessee, I like him. He's a very productive runner in the SEC, which if you're grading players, that's kind of always the tiebreaker. If they did it in the SEC, and he did. But he's a complimentary back. He's not viewed as an every down guy, and that may not matter. But they got to get a running back, folks. I'm not going to sit here and go on and on about how the Barron pick makes sense if they wait too long to get a running back. And I hope I can eat my words, because then we show up in training camp. You're like, holy crap, Audric Estime a year later, he gets it. He's ready. He's healthy. He's 21 now. He's mature in terms of the pro playbook and the lifestyle of how all this works. Okay, I'll gladly eat my words. But you can't just keep rotating guys through. And my baseball background is like this is, I don't need another fourth or fifth outfielder. At some point, I need a starting right fielder who hits third in my order. I don't need a fourth or fifth outfielder, Nick Martini, who hits eighth. Like, I don't need that guy. I can get that guy anywhere. I need one that I can plug in and say, this is a dude. This is a dude. And so we'll see. We'll see where they go with this. But they still have some other needs as we get into the second day of the draft. And that is obviously running back. Tight end, keep an eye on Mason Taylor. There were some that thought he could be a sneaky first-round pick. He was not. He was not. And he's Jason Taylor's son, the Hall of Famer. He played at LSU. I think he was a little bit underutilized at LSU, if I'm being honest. I like his game. Arroyo from Miami is still on the board. Harold Fanning from Bowling Green, still on the board. So there's a possibility, Broncos could go running back, tight end, running back today. Terrence Ferguson from Oregon is from Littleton Heritage High. He's a guy that could be available second or third round. Broncos picks today are 51 and 85. Again, if they want Henderson, they're almost certainly going to have to trade up. Quinshon Judkins might be available at 51. I think that's a gamble. I can't see Henderson being available at 51, that if you really want him, you're going to have to move up. And I think it would be worth it, frankly, if you give up like a 4 next year or whatever that number is. I think it would be worth it for Henderson. But those are some names to keep an eye on today, Friday, where you look running back, you look tight end, you look receiver. We thought cornerback would be a position they address later. That's obviously not a priority. They're going to need an offensive lineman at some point in day 3, maybe even a center, as we've talked about on this pod, with Luke Wattenberg's situation after next year. And you keep Forsythe, but you can always use depth there. And then, again, Ben Powers, no guaranteed money, I think, even this year. And Mike McGlinchey, are they going to reach a crossroads with him after this season? So I wouldn't be surprised if they add a lineman. But obviously, folks, we all watch football through kind of the fantasy football lens, through offense. We're not going to lie here and say that, we all grew up with Buddy Ryan. We love defense. That's just not the modern society. So today, they need to get a running back. They need to get a tight end. And then the Barron pick makes a lot of sense. And it's nothing against Barron. By all accounts, great kid, character guy, is going to make a good defense possibly great. But a great defense can't score you points in January. A great defense cannot do that. You've got to be functional enough offensively to stand in front of Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow and not flinch. You got to get a couple more players offensively. So we'll see. It's an intriguing draft already, the Sean Payton shocker. And we'll finish up with this quickly, the Shedeur Sanders slide, because it is a local story. And, I've always feel for a player who's projected. At one point, he was projected in the conversation to go 1 overall with Cam Ward, and he fell out of the first round. That is incredibly humbling. And to have a camera there and you got the pillows out in your little draft room and legendary, I mean, that is an absolute punch to the windpipe. Sanders talked afterward to his gathered people, and he's in Texas. It looked like at the family ranch, saying, it's kind of it's in God's control, and wherever it happens, it happens. He certainly showed professionalism there. But why did this happen with Sanders? I tried to tell people this leading up to the draft. When I was at the combine, when I watched Shedeur, number one is he doesn't have elite athletic traits. He's 6'1", 205, so he's not very tall by NFL quarterback standards, and he's not big and strong in that way, and he doesn't run well. He's really good in the pocket, processing information, which is a valuable skill, which eventually should make him an NFL starter, to be able to throw on time and on target. But when you looked at the film, most people felt like he would have been behind Bo Nix if he was in the draft last year, that even Cam Ward would have perhaps been behind Bo Nix as like the 6th or 7th quarterback taken if those two had come out last year. And so he's limited athletically in that way. Is not that modern quarterback that these teams want in terms of being able to turn a negative into a positive with the legs. His arm's just average. He's just average arm strength. So those are all things that get you knocked out of the first round. Take the name off the jersey. Just if you tell someone that about a quarterback, average arm strength, below average size, good processor, takes information well, good decision maker, on time, on target. But, oh, wow, he took 94 snacks his last 2 years of college. So, again, if you just looked at that on paper, you could see why people might say, like, that sounds like late first, early second. So he falls out. He falls out to the second round. There's some now that say, it's Deion Sanders. It's clearly the league's middle finger to his dad, Deion Sanders. I'm not going to say there's not some of that, but I will tell you this, having covered the NFL draft regularly since like 96, if a player is good enough, the baggage does not matter. It really doesn't. Whether a guy's had positive drug tests, he's had off-field issues, arrests, it's never stopped teams from taking a player if they think he's a true difference maker. They'll take him in the first round. So that's don't lean too heavily on that. The idea that, well, Deion Sanders kept him from being drafted in the first round. 32 teams passed him up, folks. Like, stop. They don't all have a conspiracy against Deion Sanders. We were wasting your time on that. Did it influence? Is that some of the tiebreaker stuff? Of course it's a factor. And it's a factor for this. Whether you love or hate Deion Sanders. Again, what he's done for the CU program, it's amazing. He revived the entire program. I'm a CU alum, first to say that. Do I think he's a great game day coach and all that? I don't really. But he revived a program that was completely dormant. So a lot of the things he does better than anyone else. The coaching part, I still think, is a work in progress. But where Shedeur does get hurt in the evaluation process as it relates to his dad, Coach Prime, he's pretty much the only coach he's ever played for. Ever. That is difficult when you're going through the process of how is he going to be coachable? What about the accountability when his dad isn't in the room as like the deciding vote? And we saw some of that last year. Remember, like he played for his dad in high school. So youth football, high school, Jackson State, and CU. It's almost unprecedented for a guy who's going into the NFL to having played for his dad all the way through his college years. You just never see it. And there were times last year that hurt him, where after the Nebraska game the first year, Coach Prime's throwing the offensive line under the bus. And then last year when they got smoked by Nebraska, Shedeur's throwing his own line under the bus. That shit won't fly in the NFL at all. You cannot blame your old line. The saying in the NFL as it relates to quarterbacks is this: when we win, it's we. When we lose, it's me. Those are the best leaders of NFL quarterbacks. You don't have to like it, folks. That's not the modern day athlete. I'm telling you what it's like in the locker room. These guys need to know a quarterback that'll fall on the sword, protect them. They do not want a quarterback who's going to blame them when things go wrong, even if it's their fault. You can do it behind closed doors. You start doing it publicly, Obviously, it's a bad look. So the optics of him playing for his dad in those situations hurt him. There's no way around that. Did it keep him from getting drafted in the first round? No. The most significant factors were the evaluation and projection, that the size is a little below average, the arm strength's a little below average, and he was sacked 94 times. Are those decisions? Are those the result of the line? Is he going to fade back? Is he always going to play hero ball? Those things drive NFL coaches and scouts crazy. And we saw it with Caleb Williams, a guy who tried to play the runaround Fran Tarkenton game at the NFL. It's almost impossible. The only one athletically that can do it is Lamar Jackson. To some degree, Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes picks and chooses spots. But like athletically, the only guy like could just run around and make crazy stuff happen almost on every play is Jackson. But even he gets hurt. Even there's a cost for him. So, Sanders, I would expect to be one of the first 5 picks to go off the board. And maybe it ends up being a blessing in disguise for him in terms of a better fit, less pressure, allow him to kind of gain his way in the NFL, because that's how you have to do it. You have to earn the trust of the locker room by putting your head down and working. Bo Nix is the most recent example here in Denver. It was amazing how quickly he won over the locker room, that when he reported in April for their first practices, Samaje Perine told me, I've never seen a rookie other than Joe Burrow that knew a playbook so well. And this is Samaje telling me this at the Super Bowl. He's like, I knew we had a guy because he's so smart, but he wasn't arrogant about it. It was like, hey, I'm going to be the quarterback. You guys expect me to know this stuff? I'm going to know it. So that would be my advice to Shedeur Sanders. Wherever you get drafted, put your head down, eliminate all the other stuff. Don't have the media go with you, the off-well media and your brother and all that. Just put your head down, get your NFL career established. And then as you get established, bring that stuff back into the picture. But in the NFL, it's really about put in the work, roll up the sleeves, prove to the locker room of grown men now, grown men. None of those guys in that locker room care about your NIL money and your commercials and what car you drive, because they all make a lot of money now. They all drive nice cars. It's about, can you help us win? Can you not be a distraction? And I think Shedeur can do that. I have confidence that he can be an NFL starting quarterback. But don't think this slide was somehow the middle finger to Deion Sanders. It was much more related to the evaluation of the player. Some of the interviews hurt Shedeur. That's on him. He's got to own that. When you go in there and you don't interview well, all of that stuff matters in the NFL. It's not just your game tape at college. It's how you act around people, the combine, the interviews, all of that matters to NFL personnel. And it bit Shedeur in the ass last night. But I do think it's going to work out. It probably delays his journey and probably prevents him from starting. It's certainly his rookie year. But I do think he's an NFL starting quarterback. I hope it all works out for him. But I would just say hesitate when you think there's some mass conspiracy against him. Is he better than Jackson Dart? Yeah, but you need a team to think that, and the Giants did not. That's the NFL. Welcome to the NFL. So I think it'll work out. As for the Broncos, they got to get a running back, folks. They've got to get a running back. They've absolutely got to get another tight end, but the running back situation must be addressed in a significant way, or I don't understand the pick for Barron. As of now, I like it. It makes sense. It will make a lot less sense if they don't address the running back in a meaningful way. Folks, I could not do this pod without the support of Nate Lundy, Danny Bailey behind the screen here that produces this stuff for Mile High Sports. They are the best. And, of course, Darby Hoggatt, my A1 from day one. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.